You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jim Lovelady, professional EOS implementer. I'm joined today with Sergio De Cesare. He's a business investor and partner, exit strategist and company value builder, a certified business coach, and a business broker. Looking forward to speaking with you here today, Sergio. Thanks for your time.
Hey, Jim. Great to be here.
So, Sergio, why don't we start off by just having you give us a little bit of a background, what you're currently doing, name of your company, and who you serve.
Right. So my company is Max Business Profits. That's the company name. I've been doing what I'm doing, working with small business owners for working on about a dozen years now. And, how I got into this was I was a business owner myself. I was in the IT industry, had an IT company. And, what I learned in selling that company eventually is that most small business owners are not doing it right at all. There was a point where I wanted to sell my company and I had a broker come in and do the numbers and play the game. At the end of that, he slid a number over to me, Jim, and the number was so insultingly low that I almost lost my temper with the guy. I mean, I had a storefront, I had employees, I had guys working for me, and the number was like, dude, I make more than this in a year. Well, here's the problem with this, here's the problem with that. So I spent the next year, and this is how I got into business consulting. I spent the next year retooling my business, retooling everything about it. Spoke to guys who'd sold businesses, spoke to guys who sold IT businesses, and I ended up putting it back on the market a year later and selling it for 5 times more than what he was telling me it was worth. And that's how I realized, if I hadn't asked these right questions, if I hadn't done these changes, if I hadn't changed my mindset about how and why things are done to make a business profitable, he would have been right. That number would have been way smaller.
That's fascinating. That's a great increase in value. So name for us the 2 or 3 things that you focused on in that 1 year period where you took it from the original offer to what you eventually earned, increasing it by X. There's probably 2 or 3 things that stand out to you that you did that would help other business owners to learn from.
Absolutely. Well, you have to think about recurring revenue. If recurring revenue model is not part of your business model, then you need to talk to somebody like you or me and see how we can create one for you. Whether that's through a blue ocean strategy or whatever, we have to find one for you because that recurring revenue brings way more value to a business and buyer's going to look at that. The other thing is I am a firm believer in the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle. What I did in my own business is I looked at the bottom 20 items in my inventory. I looked at the bottom 20 of services that I was selling, and I eliminated the low or no profit items, reinvested those resources into the top 20%. Every 6 months, I would look at that and say, okay, we have 20 different services, top to bottom, highest revenue generators, lowest revenue generators. Why am I still doing the lowest revenue generators? Going from inventory to personnel. Now, who are the bottom 20% of my employees that are not producing? And look, you got to take it across the board.
So increasing the value of a business is so critically important. And so many entrepreneurs, business owners, founders, co-founders, they don't understand what it takes to increase that value if there's value already established. What
Correct.
I have found in my own journey, I today am a professional EOS implementer, the entrepreneurial operating system. And I probably shared this with you a couple of times when we've networked
I'm actually
together.
very familiar with it. I've read Gino's books, and
Yes.
funny story real quick is I know Gino's dad. Gino's dad, Floyd, I believe, right?
Yes, you are correct.
It was a real estate trainer, and I had taken his actual course back in the day.
That's outstanding. In fact, that's part of the origin of EOS, where Gino Wickman took over his father's business in his early 20s.
Right.
And basically stabilized and eventually sold the business and had retired. He joined as a charter member of EO Detroit, Entrepreneurial Organization Detroit, and he was one of the first 10 members of that. It's a huge organization today. But back then, in that experience he had, he discovered a knack for helping entrepreneurs get more out of their business. And it really
God,
was the start of building the simple tools that we use today in EOS, eventually leading him writing a book called Traction, above my shoulder here.
yeah,
And you've seen me where I'll bring the book with me to Alignable networking events and others that I've joined. And along the way, it helps business owners, entrepreneurs, and their leadership teams get everyone on the same page. So
right.
having a business operating system, I think you would agree, can also create a foundation for a business and would help to generate even more value when it came time to consider selling the business. Would you agree?
I would agree. I would agree. And, those systems, that's really what a buyer's buying, right? They're buying the systems and they're buying future revenue. That's it, right? What else is there? I mean, there
No,
are hard assets. I mean, if you're in the construction business and you've got cranes and stuff like that, of course, there's hard assets, but that stuff in itself is not necessarily the means of future revenue, right? That stuff could be sold at fire sale for pennies on the dollar.
you mentioned something I think is also very important. It's having the right people in the right seats.
Of course.
So, basing a leadership team based on your core values, based on accountability, the discipline to the business, having everybody on the same page, when you can demonstrate that in a potential sale of a business where there's potential buyers, whether it be private equity,
Right.
other like businesses admiring the structure, the foundation, the tools, the cohesiveness of a leadership team, they look at that, and it's said that EOS properly implemented can add as much as X to that sale price, that bottom line. And I know personally, both having been a customer and now as an implementer, EOS can have that transformational effect on a business. That's why I was attracted when I first met you in what you do, because I think you add so much value to the small to medium-sized business. So tell me a little bit more about some of the companies that you've helped here in Southwest Florida.
Well, the interesting thing about it, at this level, and when I say this level, I mean like businesses that are probably valued at probably less than $10 million, right? They all seem to have the same problem. So I am not necessarily restricted by industry or
Right.
segment. Right. So I have home inspectors, I have electricians, plumbers, gun store, I've had attorneys. And you say, well, I mean, how does an attorney have the same problem as an electrician? Well, when you understand that my business is based on 4 pillars and they're common through every business regardless, right? And the 4 pillars are messaging. Now, mind you, I said messaging, not marketing. Okay. There's a difference there. And many people don't know that difference. So messaging, accounting or financial understanding, operational excellence, and mindset. And those are the 4 critical areas that I've found that span every business, particularly those businesses under 10. Look, the hardest part is making $1 million. 10 million is easy after you've made $1 million. It's just a question of scale or growth, right? You have to understand not all businesses can be scaled. Making 10 is not as hard as making the first one.
So talk about those 4 pillars you just mentioned. Is that what you feel are critical to achieving that first $1 million and then scaling
Yes.
that beyond that, having the discipline, the accountability, the
Yes,
repeatable
absolutely.
processes in place that will help you to scale and grow that business?
Yes. So for instance, start about messaging. Most companies they haven't drilled down enough to understand who their best clients are or customers are, where these peoples are. Yeah, they know the demographics of this, right? But they don't know the psychographics, right? I want people who make over $100,000 over the age of 55, but where do they live? Where do they hang out? Where do you reach them? Now, that all being said, what do they need to hear to do business with you and what you're doing? And, sometimes he just goes, well, I do this exercise all the time in my workshop. I'm like, okay, mortgage broker, real estate agent, stand up, give us the pitch. They give us the pitch. Well, I'm a realtor, stop. Okay. You said realtor, that went in this ear and came out the other because my brain already tells me I think I know what a realtor does and I'm not interested. But when I worked with some of the people I worked with in real estate, I told them, you will never use the word realtor talking to a prospect. You will never give them the opportunity to discount you right out of the gate. Well, what do I tell people? I don't care. You're a real estate sales and marketing professional. That's what you do. Okay. So that's part of the messaging thing. The financial accountability, understanding. If I ask any of these business owners, what's your best selling project? What's your best selling product or service? And what's the margin on that? Crickets, right? They'll tell you pretty much what the service or product is that they know is being rung up all the time, but they can't tell you what the margin is. They can't tell you the profitability on it, right? They tend to discount. I'm like, okay, discounting is a bad word in my business. I'm going to show you why. Okay. You have to do more volume in order to make up for the lost profit and discount, but that's a whole nother story. So there you go. Financial understanding, messaging, operational excellence. Okay. Let's talk about processes. Are they documented? Do they work? Who's running the processes? See, I'm not a guy, I don't believe in managing people. I think you should have leaders. I'm ex-military, so leadership is a big thing, right? You have the right leaders. You manage the process, and the leaders are not there to manage the people. The leaders are there to encourage the people. And sometimes you have to encourage them to even be better than where they are now and move on. That's just the way life is, right? Leadership is about encouraging people. But if I have the right process in place, I don't have to manage the people. The process gets done, right? It's managing the process, perfecting the process. One of my certifications is in Kaizen, which if you know anything about it, it's all process related. How do we make this more efficient, right? Because what people don't understand, the profit's not made, Jim, in the price you charge for something. The profit's made is how fast you can deliver it and move on to the next, right? So if you could do 10 in the space of where you did 5 before, that's where you're making your profit, right? And then finally, the last one is just mindset. Sometimes, and in the last couple of years, I've spent a lot of time getting certifications in neuroplasticity and neuroscience understanding. I do have clients that are sometimes like, they're not going as fast, or they're not doing what I think they should be doing based on their verbalizing their motivations for doing it. So what does that mean? They should be way ahead of the game at a certain point, but they're not. And I scratch my head as to why for years, why? And then, I started to understand that it was the internal talk that was keeping them from doing what they needed to do every day. Either fear, I'm not good enough, poser syndrome, I want to be accepted. What if I get too successful? There's like 6 basic ones.
Sure.
That impact people's brains that keep them where they are instead of where they want to be.
There is so much alignment between what you just articulated with the 4 pillars and what I teach with EOS. If this gig with Max Business Profits doesn't work out, I've got an opportunity for you with EOS.
Thank you.
I want to come back.
Appreciate it.
I want to come back to you. There's a lot to unpack in what you just shared. Some
Yeah.
really golden nuggets in there. One, you came around in talking about the 4 pillars. You talked about margin. When you first talked about the 80-20 rule, you emphasized revenue, and I was waiting to hear the word margin because I believe profitable business is everyone's responsibility in an organization. There's no sense in doing what you do if you can't make money at it. And so doing things profitably, following process, repeatable process. And like you talked about, providing the tools, the guidance, the black and white outline of roles and responsibilities. What's your metric? Holding people accountable to that.
Right.
Using data as a way to take out the emotion and really drive into what we need to do as a team to achieve our objectives. Another thing you said, you're a veteran. What service what service in the military did you serve?
I spent several years in the 82nd Airborne in the combat unit. Jumped that airplane for a living.
You were in the Army. Fantastic. Thank you very much. Like you, I'm a veteran. So I'm a veteran of the United States Air Force. So thank you very much. I knew there's a reason beyond just our business alignment. There was something about you that I liked a lot. And there's a discipline that you carry, and having interacted with you several times, both Sergio and I are members of Alignable. Sergio has been host of a live in-person event we have it each Friday in Naples, Florida. And if you're not a member, I encourage you to check out Alignable. It's a great networking group. A lot of small, medium-sized businesses are represented there throughout Southwest Florida. And that's how I met Sergio. And for you to accept this invitation to do this podcast today, I think creates a mutual benefit. I know a lot of people are going to want to hear what you have to say, and I think they're going to be very impressed when they hear the breadth and depth of what you're talking about. Something else you talked about in what you shared was leadership. And I want to piggyback on what you shared, I believe, and this is just through my own personal experience of sales and marketing in my entire career, and now as an EOS implementer, the number one job for leadership is to listen, understand, and solve problems. So when we talk about who's in the leadership team, whether it be finance, operations, sales, ownership, and it goes beyond that for every unique business. But what is the goal of that leadership team? If you're having meetings on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly basis, what's the effectiveness of those meetings? And the objective of a meeting with your team should be to solve problems. So I think if you can demonstrate that to a potential buyer, there's a cohesiveness, a communication channel, there's a method, a process that we as an aligned team follow to identify, discuss, and solve our biggest issues and understand how to prioritize what we call in EOS, your rocks, your 90-day objectives. And then all the other stuff we solve as a team. We call that a level 10 meeting where we dedicate the majority of that 90-minute meeting. The majority of that time, 60 minutes, is for what we call IDS, identify, discuss, and solve. Yes, you know what I'm talking about.
I do. I'm very familiar with the L10.
Yes. And I know as a customer, we try to self-implement EOS and we try to interpret what was written in the book Traction. And not that we're all dumb, but we just couldn't figure it out. Once we hired an implementer, we could actually spell EOS. We could figure out what an L10 meeting really was about. We got our scorecard aligned. We got our vision traction organizer aligned. We defined our core values and made them mean something to the organization. So we use that as a guiding set of values for how we hired, how we fired, how we gave praise to employees. And the bobblehead you see above my shoulder here, before I go any further, Sergio, where are you from originally? You mentioned earlier.
My family is originally from Long Island, New York. We moved here in 1978.
Fantastic. So you're almost native here to Southwest Florida. You've seen
everybody else pretty much.
Yes. Yeah, you're definitely in the minority in that regard. I'm originally from Detroit. So the bobbleheads you see on either side of me are of Detroit sports teams. And I can speak openly about this. I'm 62 years old. When I was about age of 9, I came of age. And the owner of the team, William Clay Ford, throughout his life, he owned the team going back to 1962. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2014. His daughter ascended to the ownership role in 2020. And the first thing she did was identify who the right people were for their leadership team. So they hired people like Chris Spielman, former player, as senior vice president of operations. They hired Brad Holmes. They got Dan Campbell as a head coach. And what did they do? They defined their core values. And from those core values, they apply that for who they draft, who they waive, who they trade for, who walks into that locker room, who's let go. At the end of game ball, when they win a game and they give out game balls, it's always based on the core values of the organization. And quite frankly, they have transformed that team to now a perennial Super Bowl contender. When I was a kid, they were just one of the awful teams for many, many years. So I connect the dots here with EOS and getting the right people in the right seats. And you mentioned that from a business perspective, having the right people and using the 80-20 rule. And we teach tools like that to help you get focused on who's the right person in the right seat. Not necessarily your friend, not someone you grew up with, not maybe your brother or sister.
Oh, God, no.
You know what I'm talking about. You probably see it all day long.
Family businesses are some of the toughest ones I have to work with. I have a story about a local family-owned business, and they're still going at it. But they brought me in for exit strategy. It was a local gun company. I'll leave it there. And they're like, I got my kids working for me. Their wives are working for me. I'm 60 years old. I want to get out, and we want to go do things, whatever. Help me come up with an exit strategy and then help me build the value of this company so I could sell it in a year or two. So, okay, I'll do the best I can. I mean, 2 years, a year or two is kind of a short span to crush on the value side, but it's possible. So what had happened was, and I never did a single marketing thing for them. They had pretty good marketing. Their message is out there, and they're the only ones. They're very unique messaging. But it was a question of leadership in that company. It was a question of hiring the right people. And when I say hiring the right people, when you go and you hire people, you're hiring for one position. Down here, in this area because they're so stretched in their budgets. They're hiring one person to do the job of two, which is a big mistake.
Yes.
So dealing with that, whatever. That company, when I first went to it, was doing 2.1 million in sales. By the end of year 3, which is when it concluded my engagement with them, they went from 2.1 to 10 million. Why? Because nobody was running around with their hair on fire anymore every day. Nobody was dealing with the family dynamics anymore, right? Because everybody's job is outlined precisely now. Everybody's responsibilities outlined precisely now. The gears of the machine started connecting and running smoother because I don't care who you are. If, most of the businesses that come to me are like, oh, well, we need lead generation. We need more business. Do you? Because if I double your business, triple your business, is your business going to be able to handle that?
Yes.
Because most times it can't. So now you're mad at me because now, yeah, you've made more money, you've gotten more business, but now you've got more 3-star reviews because somebody dropped the ball because you weren't built.
Right.
You weren't engineered. You weren't planned to double that volume in such a short time.
So I want to highlight something you share on your LinkedIn profile. You've got a video called Transformational Coach. Why don't you introduce to the audience what the video is, what it's about, and the problem that you're trying to solve?
Transformational coaching in the business arena is basically exactly what I told you Pillar 4 was about. The mindset, right? There is this, I have a certification, it's called Magnetic Mind. So there's always this tension from where we are today to where we want to be, right? Just imagine, you here and then you wanting to be here. Well, between those 2 points, there is structural tension.
Yes.
You're always trying to be pulled back to where you are now. Why? Okay. Well, I don't want to be here. I want to be there. Well, you do. But subconsciously, you're fighting it because there's fear involved, right? There's a lot of reasons what's keeping you from doing that. Can I do it? Will I fail? Blah, 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 blah. These are all the internal conversations that we make up and we project because, it's like the old saying, I think it was Jim Rohn, right? Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right either way. And so many of my clients, I have to kind of get them into this different mindset, kind of go back. Because, look, I grew up in middle class, very middle class. My father was in construction. Sometimes growing up, we have these mindset and these belief systems about money that aren't necessarily true. They're not true. It's what we were exposed to, therefore we believed it. And so I deal with a lot of my clients who are kind of like, yeah, I'll never have $1 million company. Why? $1 million is not that much.
I agree.
Not that hard to have $1 million company.
So let's talk about that mindset. And I think the original invitation that I had sent to you for this conversation was around growth ceilings. As a company, it's like growing up, right? You're going to go through growth spurts. And as a company, you're going to experience the ebbs and flows, whether it's driven by the economy, it's driven by supply chains, driven by personnel,
Sure.
a myriad of things that come up and come at you at one time. So mindset's really interesting. So talk to me about businesses that you've encountered that perhaps you see they've hit a growth ceiling. And as a transformational coach, what would you guide people to do to get past those points?
Well, first of all, you have to have a vision or a desire to go to what's next. I say this, I've stood up even in Alignable and said, whatever your business is making today is exactly what you designed it to make. If you wanted to make something more or something different, you have to change something, whether that be your belief system. Well, maybe I need some more marketing. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know that. But number one, you have to believe that you want something more and it's attainable. Because without that, do people fall into success accidentally? Sure, it happens all the time. But I wouldn't say it's because of a belief system. I would say it was maybe in spite of a belief system. Or maybe they had no belief system, which made them untainted in their brain when it came to money. Oh, money's just a thing. Money's just a transfer of energy. Right? But, when you're focusing on the money and how much you don't have or how much you need, guess what happens? The universe answers you. And scarcity becomes part of the problem.
Great. It's almost like a low-hanging ceiling, right? Those words you just shared just made me envision the image of a low-hanging ceiling. Like, we're both tall guys. I know we're both over 6 feet.
Yeah.
And being crushed by a ceiling. And as a business owner goes, when you hit those ceilings, it can feel like that crushing ceiling on top of your head. And teaching people how to get past that point, it's both mindset, like you said, and it's having a plan, a vision, a structure that's going to get you from that $1 million to 10 million to 25 million and beyond.
Correct.
Fantastic, Sergio. I can't thank you enough for your time. This has been a fascinating conversation. Thank you today for sharing your insights, and I'll be inviting you back for another conversation in the very near future. Thank you very much.
Forward to it. Thank you so much.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.